You had a big, beautiful, upright piano in your home growing up. Now what? This week, we meet a group of people who have found an ingenious way to divert discarded pianos from the landfill. How's it going? Thank you so much for hitting play on Earth Care, the podcast where we have climate-conscious conversations in a not-so-overwhelming way. I'm your host, Sarah Christie, and we're here, episode 11 and the final episode of the Sustainability in the Live Music Industry series. Now, before I introduce you to this week's guest, I just want to say a big thank you, whether you've listened before or this is your first time hitting play on Earth Care. I really do appreciate you making time for this podcast and this conversation and this series. Did you have a piano growing up? We did. It was an upright piano, quite large. It occupied about 1/3 of the dining room in our childhood home. But that wasn't uncommon to see. In fact, two of our neighbors had a similar setup. Where are those pianos now? So my parents still live in our childhood home that we grew up in. And coincidentally, just this past year, my parents and one of our neighbors, like I just mentioned, both decided that, hey, it's time to get rid of this piano. Now, both pushing 30, if not over 30 years old, so they had their time in those homes. My mom did her due diligence too. She called around, she asked if there were places to donate these pianos to, but in the end, there just wasn't a demand for it. So they had to hire a junk company to pick it up and take it away. So if there isn't a demand, well, what does that mean for all of the forgotten pianos? In 2017, bandmates Tim Vincent-Smith and Matthew Wright came up with a creative way to extend the piano story while keeping it from the dump. They built the first amphitheater made entirely from upcycled pianos. It was delivered to the Edinburgh Fringe Fest and saw 18,000 visitors. Since then, the Pianodrome has evolved into an iconic symbol of community and cultural resilience. Their mission is described as a radical reimagining of the piano in today's throwaway culture. Tim Vincent-Smith is an artist, musician, composer, the co-director of Pianodrome, and is this week's guest on Earth Care. In 2022, Tim performed Playing Beethoven, a new play for the Old Royal Pianodrome, and described Pianodrome as a space for people to explore and realize their creative potential. In this episode, Tim walks us through the TLC and the careful labor that goes into dissecting a piano and then upcycling it into something new. He shares details on their Adopt a Piano days, how many pianos it takes to build an amphitheater, and shares a few really special stories about some musical experiences from the amphitheater and the community that it's built. Here it is, episode 11 of the Sustainability in the Live Music Industry series with Pianodrome. Tim Vincent-Smith, co-director of Pianodrome, thank you so much for being on Earth Care. We made it work. We had a few technical hiccups, but we're here, and I'm so appreciative for you to be on Earth Care, especially to be a part of the Sustainability in the Live Music Industry series.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Yes, you have me. I'm very pleased to be here too.
We're here. We can hear each other. We can see each other. And I mean, all the way in Scotland. So Toronto to Scotland. So it is very cool that, as many technical difficulties as we run into, it's special that we're able to connect, across the pond like this.
Well, it's just a sign of the times, isn't it? That we're so frustrated that we can't see and hear each other perfectly clearly immediately 5,000 miles away from each other.
Right.
We should probably just think back 20 years when that just wasn't possible, full stop.
Exactly. Yeah. Glass half full. Now, I just want to start with, how did the idea from the beginning, how did the idea to start upcycling pianos initially come about?
Well, I used to make furniture out of found materials, and I'm a musician also. So, and I used to go along the beaches to find driftwood and stuff to build, shelves and seats and things like that. There was a junkyard, Sam Burns junkyard. It's still there in Preston Pans, just outside of Edinburgh. And there was a piano there in the rain, and I had been commissioned to make a window seat for a friend who was a musician. And I thought, oh, well, this piano, that gives some good wood on that, So it was obviously way beyond being a playable piano, and had been for years. And I bought it for 10 quid, pulled it apart, and found, as it happens, an antique coin under the keys, which when I looked up the price of this antique coin, it was 10 quid. So I thought, oh, well, that's a bargain. And then I pulled the piano apart and turned it into a window seat. And that was the first piano piece. But that got me thinking, it got some other commissions from other musician friends. And then the pianos kept on coming. And I discovered there was an seemingly endless source of pianos in Edinburgh that were being thrown on the skip, which is definitely not the case in many places around the world. But I would imagine in Canada, in fact, there probably are a lot of pianos. I mean, Canada's the sort of place where 100 years ago, everyone would have had a piano in the same way that these days everyone has a TV or a car or both. Well, those people now are thinking, well, I need a space for my big TV. Where am I going to put this old piano, which we haven't tuned for years? At Pianodrome, we have the solution.
It's funny. It's as if you had a camera into my parents' house. They live in the same house that we grew up in. And just this past year, got rid of our big stand-up piano.
Well, there you go. Either that's a very small chance, or you're one of hundreds, if not thousands of people who have this beautiful old piano. Their parents, grandparents played it. Their parents thought about playing, didn't, then it went out of tune, then it got in the way, and then we put central heating in, and that heated it up and cooled it down, and then it was finally untunable, and with reluctance, you got rid of it. I mean, that is just the story of these things. Generally, often, and it's a shame. It's a real shame.
Well, and it was kind of serendipitous coming across Pianodrome, looking at building this series because that just happened with my parents, and I know the process they went through to figure out what do we do with it. Does someone want to buy it? Is someone looking for a piano? And in the end, it went to just junk, and that was sad because I'm thinking, well, why doesn't someone want a piano? And then you see this amphitheater, what you have done. And so I really want to peel back everything that goes into building this piano amphitheater. How many pianos does it take to build the amphitheater?
40 at least, although we probably pulled apart 100 in the construction process because we were making prototypes first, and we tried some stuff that didn't work, so probably 100 went into making the first Pianodrome. But then since then we have made 2 more Pianodromes and a whole bunch of other sculptures, and pulled apart a load more pianos. I mean, I don't know, this is a podcast so you can't see, but the wall behind me is made out of 4 piano backs. Yeah, so we're just about to come up to our celebration of having pulled apart 500 pianos.
Wow, and it really looks like every piece is being used in one capacity or another. That
Absolutely.
First amphitheater, how long did it take to complete the build?
Well, the actual building only took about 3 months, but the prototyping process was a couple of years, and the designs and all of that sort of stuff. So depends where you count from. In the final construction process, and in fact, this is something we repeated in Charlotte in North Carolina last January. It took us 3 months there with a team of between 5 and 10 builders at any given time to make a Pianodrome.
Right. And you see, the team online and just browsing through your website, it really does seem like a massive project. I kept thinking, do you have any chiropractors on standby? Because all of this just sounds heavy.
Yeah, you just got to be so careful with your back. Yeah. But there are techniques for lifting pianos. So I always say to make gravity your friend. If you're fighting against gravity, you're going to lose. But if you make friends with gravity and you have an awareness of where the center of gravity of a heavy object is, and you lift always nearest the center of gravity, I mean, this is all rather abstract. But basically, if you just try and keep one side of the piano on the ground at all times, that means you're not deadlifting the whole weight of it. And I asked, actually, Jerry Love is from Edinburgh Piano Moves, who is a local piano moving firm, that they give us a lot of the pianos, if not almost all of the pianos that we use. I asked him, how does one safely lift a piano? And he's like, oh, just use your common sense and don't drop it on your toe, so.
Yes, knock on wood.
Yeah, touch wood. No injuries as yet. Yeah.
Now, how many functioning pianos, playable pianos, are actually built into the drome?
In the first one, there are five playable pianos.
That just is so special. I hope anyone listening will go and take a look at the pictures afterwards to see that. What is it? It can seat 100 people. Is that correct?
It's a 100-seater amphitheatre, yeah. So it's an in the round theatre with tiered seating, made of 5 sections, and each section has a playable piano embedded into the structure, and also a stairway with balustrades, and every part of it, down to the flathead screws, is made out of old pianos.
So, what is it like tuning the playable pianos?
Oh well, I've tried to learn to tune pianos, but it's beyond my abilities. But we have some very good friends who come and tune our pianos, and they're also now, through our piano adoption scheme, teaching our staff and our volunteers to tune pianos, because part of the reason that there are so many pianos being thrown away is that the whole culture surrounding the making, maintenance, learning, tuning, fixing, all of this culture is dying out, and the pianos can't survive without being played, being fixed, being tuned. So that's part of the reason why this project was possible in the first place, and part of the thing that we're trying to turn around here. It's worth saying that if we can save a piano, we do. And this has been one of the most extraordinary turns of this project, is that we started off just trying to stop junk pianos going into landfill, but then we started to realize that quite a lot of the pianos that we were getting were perfectly good pianos. And then we developed our adopt a piano scheme. And now every week we have a maintenance session where Joey, Dr. Piano, he's called, he comes in and teaches us to tune and fix pianos. And then we have an adopt session on a Saturday with a free lunchtime concert, and coffee and buns, and then people can come and try out our pianos. And we have something in the region of 20 uprights and up to 10 grand pianos at any given time. At the moment, we've got a Steinway grand, we've got a couple of Becksteins, we've got an Erard. These are all the top quality pianos, and there's really nothing wrong with them at all. I mean, the Steinway came out of Grangemouth Town Hall, which is, it's just been sitting there, no one's playing it, there's nothing wrong with it. They couldn't wait to get rid of it. They paid to get it out of there, and they gave it to us, and now we're in possession of this Steinway piano, which is this is our concert piano that we use. I mean, it's worth £10,000, but it just wasn't worth anything to Grangemouth Town Hall. Unbelievable.
Hearing you talk about it, it really is such a beautiful way to articulate that intersection between how music and sustainability can live together. What role do you think music can play in this conversation about sustainability?
Well, I'm a musician, really. And I spent 3 years busking, playing my violin on the streets of Paris, and living in Shakespeare and Company bookshop, just sleeping amongst the book stacks, free of rent. I was just sort of building shelves out of wood that I found in skips, under the direction of George Whitman, the rather eccentric man who ran the place. Something really galvanized for me around that, of just like, it doesn't burn a lot of carbon playing the piano.
Well, especially if you're using an upcycled one or a refurbished one, or one that's been...
I mean, how else does that link to the environment? That links to the sound environment, the cultural environment. All of these things are more important than a number of, carbon credits or whatever. I just think it's so important. I think culture is so important. I think music is so important to me personally for my mental health, but I also dare to propose that it's important for bringing people together and getting them to focus on the things which are important in our environment and in our lives, which is, finding beauty in sound, finding beauty in materials and in our surroundings, and celebrating that.
Which leads me to my last question, actually, because I can only imagine, as an outsider reading about it and seeing videos, how special that experience is to be in that intimate space where you're watching a performance and touching the amphitheater that you've built. But for you, what has that experience been like, watching performances there, but also performing in that space?
I mean, it's been everything, from the best things to the worst things, as you can imagine. There were times when, like, being the director of this company meant that I was not only building and programming and performing and, doing, and also trying to be a young father at the same time. I mean, like, actually pushed me to the edge of mental breakdown and beyond. But at the other end of the spectrum, there have been moments that are just indescribably beautiful connections with audiences. I mean, the thing about it being an acoustic amphitheater, I mean, it actually amplifies the acoustic because there's lots of wooden panels all facing into the center, and the audience are very close in. You can pack a lot of people into a very close space, and everybody's focusing in on the performance. And there was a performance that we did with Sync. So Sync is the trio, which my co-director Matt plays the saxophone, I play the violin, and Daniel, who stays well out of the Pianodrome for other purposes, plays the accordion. And we play improvised acoustic avant-garde music. And we had a show in the Fringe in the old Royal High, so the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, in this derelict school which had been empty. We played a Fringe show in this school which had been dark for 60 years and sits on top of Calton Hill in the middle of Edinburgh. We were improvising a piece which just got quieter and quieter and quieter until we were almost just sort of waving our hands over the instruments, and everyone was listening so closely that you could almost hear the music in the silence. And suddenly I was deeply moved by that experience. There was a kind of an access of like understanding that music and performance isn't just about the sound, it's about a kind of focus of attention, it's about a consciousness, and the awakening of that consciousness is what the Pianodrome can do. The framing of life in such a way that it awakens that consciousness is the real magic of the Pianodrome. When it works, it's breathtaking.
That gave me chills. That's really beautiful, and such a beautiful example of being present too.
Yeah.
Of, really soaking in every bit of that moment, which music has the power to do.
Well, I mean, to come back to the environment and environmental considerations, I mean, I think being present is such an important part of it. It's recognizing where we are and being transparent about that and understanding that, which is in some ways can be overwhelming and terrifying, but in other ways can be really empowering, really exciting, and is just so important.
Well, and I think this just naturally creates an organic conversation about the environment in a very casual way. We're talking about music, and we happen to also be talking about keeping things out of a landfill. And that is really powerful because, it's not scary when you talk about it that way. And it kind of takes the power back, which is really important.
That's definitely the idea. I mean, being in a circle, being in a circular space, and also being in a space where the division between audience and performer is much less than in most performance spaces, means that it's very much everybody is taking part and everybody is present, and that's a really important thing about the project.
Well, Tim, I really do appreciate your time. It was such a pleasure to talk to you and learn more about Pianodrome. Thank you so much for being on Earth Care.
That's a great pleasure. It's lovely to meet you, Sarah, and I'm glad we finally got over the technical difficulties, and it's been wonderful to talk to you.
How special is that? The stories, the concept. Pianodrome, of course, is in Scotland, but like Tim mentioned off the top of the interview, Discarded Pianos is not exclusive to Edinburgh. And what they're doing is a transferable innovation that perhaps could get some wheels turning over here in Canada as well. I'll include links to Pianodrome in the show notes if you want to see some of their videos, their creations, or reach out, find ways to bring this practice to your community next. Before we wrap up this 11-episode series of sustainability in the live music industry, we of course have to talk about the Fans Choose to Reuse pledge. Now, this is a pledge that I launched that invites music lovers and concert goers to take climate action by bringing a reusable water bottle with you to the concert whenever the venue allows it. In each episode, I promise to make climate action that much easier for you by sharing new venues across Canada that allow personal bottles. And we've covered a lot of ground. We went to Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Winnipeg, Halifax, and more. So this week, we're wrapping it all up with a few different cities. Okay, you ready? Port Theatre, Nanaimo, BC. They allow reusable water bottles. Capitol Ballroom in Victoria, BC, Prospera Place in Kelowna, BC, Yukon Arts Centre in Whitehorse. Bring your own personal bottle there. Grand Theatre in London, Ontario, and the Peterborough Memorial Centre in Peterborough, Ontario all allow guests to bring their own reusable water bottle. If I didn't mention a city you're curious about, keep in touch. Earth Care Show on Instagram. Come say hi. I'm always on there talking about venue policies, new venues I come across, or venues that you ask me about. In this series, we've gone behind the scenes at a music festival. We've met experts who have been greening tours for superstar artists for over 30 years. We've talked about reducing travel emissions, touched on ways to take action as a fan, sustainable merch, discussed ways that we can reach out to our favorite artists and then get them involved in greening the industry as well. We've learned about completely unique ways to create energy and the importance of making sustainability fun. If there was an episode that stands out to you, I invite you to share it on your social media, in your Instagram story, or on your Twitter. I'm a one-woman team over here at Earth Care, so that really does help get the word out about the podcast and encourage more people to join an increasingly important conversation about sustainability. As I record this, we're in the middle of an extreme heat wave with the humidity making it feel like 40 or 100. I honestly can't tell. The planet is actively telling us things need to change. So as we wrap up the series, the deal is now, if you find yourself heading to a concert, a live music event this summer, before you go, check their reusable water bottle policy. If they allow reusable water bottles, bring one. Under the umbrella of live music, water is almost always that one area of our climate action that we can control. And when the temperatures are this hot, yeah, it's about taking care of the planet, but also it's very much about taking care of yourself as well. As always, I appreciate you making time for Earth Care. It really does mean the world to me. The episodes are all out there, so if you missed one, hey, scroll back, check them out. I'm your host, Sarah Christie, and until the next one, remember this: the Earth is your home. You are entitled to want to take care of your home.